Hey guys, welcome back. It's Ripe again, back with more Just No Mother-in-Law stories. In this video, my entitled mother-in-law demands the house back for 1/4 of the price that she sold to us after we renovated everything. Let's dive right into the story. So me and my wife have been in a relationship since we were in high school and after 10 years decided to get married. Obviously our parents know each other very well as we were so young when we began dating, they liked each other, had no problems and it was really all fine and dandy. In terms of my relationship with my in-laws, the same can be said, there were no problems and we got along very well. For the past 10 years before the marriage, we all got increasingly close and my back then future mother-in-law began calling me her son a good few years before I proposed. And it was sort of a given that the proposal would come. I mean, we'd been dating for so long and we were and still are madly in love. However, once I broke the news that we were to be married, my mother-in-law was suddenly cold and distant with me. I cannot explain it, it was as if I was a different man that my wife had rebounded to, it was like she didn't know it. I hated it. And my wife picked up on it as well and would speak to her mother in private about the situation. Alas, her mother insisted that nothing was amiss and that it was simply all in our heads. I'm letting you know this because I feel it's important to note that she has not always been so cold and cruel towards me, it was just ever since the marriage. Not long after we got married, we decided we needed to find a house. We had already been living together but wanted to properly purchase and own a home, as most do as they get older. So we've been looking around for a while. It's a nightmare though, our credit is great but the deposits are insane. My wife moaned to her mother one afternoon. "I remember being in that boat," she replied, shaking her head, "although it does seem much worse now." "I really don't think we'll be able to get a house for another 5 years at least," I added in. My mother-in-law seemed to sit in thought for a moment, contemplating what I don't know, well, now I do, and said, "I have an idea." "What is it?" my wife asked. "You both know that me and your dad own that property on the west side of town," she began. Yeah, my wife sighed. "The beautiful home with the garden to die for. How about you buy it?" "What?" me and my wife say in unison. "It needs so much work doing to it. Me and your father will never get around to it. Take it off our hands for its market value, get the mortgage from the bank, but you will not need a deposit for us." Are you sure?" I asked, to which my mother-in-law smiled at me in a rather unnerving way. So that was that. We were going to be buying a house from my mother-in-law. It seemed ideal. It was rather inexpensive due to the amount of work that needed to be done to it, something me and my wife would love to do, having our own project. The lack of deposit was also a huge bonus, as to be honest, that's our main issue. The following weeks we got everything in order. We were so excited. We did draft up proper contracts and everything before anyone panics. We were doing this the right way. My parents and my wife's parents helped us move in. We were going to be staying mostly in the half of the house that is well more livable, the rest still has some problems, just needing a good bit of development and things fixing. Once it's all done, we knew it would be an absolute stunning home. Over the course of the next few years, my relationship with my mother-in-law improved once again, and I was happy. I figured that perhaps her sour mood was just down to the sudden realization that her baby girl had grown up. Maybe the change was hard for her, she's only human after all, but alas, things were now great. During this time, any and every spare bit of money me and my wife had would be pumped into our home. We had all sorts of renovation projects underway at any one time, and we loved it. We did everything ourselves, going to some classes to learn how to weld and spent hours and hours painting and decorating. It was honestly so fun, it felt like such an amazing bonding experience to have something so personal be our hobby. We were doing an amazing job too, we would have some friends over and get endless compliments on whatever room we had just finished doing up. It was a lot of work with so much needing to be done, so many rooms to paint and decorate. It was also not the easiest living in only a few rooms, but we made it work. "It's coming along so well, guys, I cannot wait," my mother-in-law stated one day as she walked around. At the time I didn't think her last sentence was weird, but now I'm not so sure. "And to have it done all yourselves, good job kids," my father-in-law stated, who, by the way, had no knowledge of the plans of my mother-in-law. Well then, another few years pass and we had finally finished the project. Everything was looking just amazing, we were so proud of what we had done and we are finally able to just live in our gorgeous home and save some money up finally. For reference though, this is around 6 months ago from the current date. "Wow, it just looks so amazing," my mother-in-law stated as she walked around. We had decided to forbid anyone from coming in for the past year because we wanted it to be a surprise when finished. It was so worth it to see the looks on everyone's faces as they toured around our home. "Yeah, this will be great," she continued, clapping her hands. "I cannot wait to start a family here," my wife muttered, hugging me from behind. To this, my mother-in-law spun around and said, "What do you mean? I'm buying this house back." We laughed, thinking she was joking. "That's a good one." "I'm serious, this is my house." All laughter fizzled out of the room. "Hun, what are you on about?" my father-in-law added in. "We are buying this house back," she stated, and then proceeded to state her price, which was 1/4 of what we paid. "So let me get this right, you want to pay 1/4 the price we did for the house that is now worth easily double?" I asked with a raised brow. She must be joking, but she wasn't, and this conversation went on for hours. "Stop being so ungrateful, think of what we have done for you here. We are the only reason you got this house," she yelled, around 1/4 of an hour into the discussion. What? I completely agree, but we didn't just move in to waste a lot of money doing it up and then to sell it back to you. And for 1/4 the price? Just no. "You know, I never liked you. I don't think you're good enough for my daughter, and I wish you never came into her life." Silence. Nobody spoke after that, other than my mother-in-law, who kept on yelling and screaming until her husband dragged her out. All of our families were there, and it was frankly embarrassing. I couldn't believe her hurtful words, couldn't believe that I thought she had changed from her suddenly cold ways. My wife was devastated that her mother acted like that. Just as we had all calmed down, we heard a smash in the front room. This was quickly followed by my mother-in-law, who came charging through the door and planted a left hook right to my face. This time it was not only her husband dragging her away. With the assault and the smash of the window, we decided to temporarily at least cut contact with her. We didn't think it would be permanent until she showed up a few weeks later and began damaging our property even further. We couldn't believe it, and just for some reference, we are now in the process of trying to get her to seek professional help. We know this is not her, something must be up. Alongside this, to protect ourselves while she has this episode, we filed for a restraining order. Something we felt bad about but knew it was necessary. If we want to start a family in this house, we needed it and us to be safe. And now we got an update to the story. It reads like this. After filing the restraining order, things calmed down, but not completely. So my wife and I were determined to move forward with our lives and create the peaceful home we had envisioned. It wasn't easy. Cutting off a family member, especially a parent, is never a simple decision, but we felt like we had no choice. We hoped that the space would give my mother-in-law time to reflect and seek the help that we knew she needed. For the next few months, things were quiet. We didn't hear from her directly, but we did get word through family that she was still upset. She would occasionally rant to others, telling them that we had stolen the house and ruined her life. Some of our extended family members reached out to us, urging us to reconsider the restraining order, saying that family is family and we should find a way to resolve things peacefully. But we stood firm. We were not willing to risk another outburst, especially after the physical assault and property damage. My wife and I wanted to start a family, and the last thing we needed was a volatile person in our lives. We consulted with a lawyer who reassured us that we were within our rights to keep the restraining order in place, and that if my mother-in-law continued to harass us or tried anything else, we could escalate the situation further by filing criminal charges. At this point, we were still hoping that she would seek help, but weeks turned into months and there was no sign of her changing. My wife was heartbroken, but we remained focused on moving forward. We finally began making plans to start our family. We wanted to focus on the future, on building the life we had worked so hard for. Then, out of the blue, we received a letter. It was not from my mother-in-law directly, but from her lawyer. She was suing us, claiming that we had defrauded her by purchasing the house at a low price, fixing it up, and then refusing to sell it back to her at a discounted rate. She alleged that we had taken advantage of her generosity and that the house should be returned to her. The lawsuit was ridiculous, but it still shook us up. I knew it was a last-ditch effort to get back at us, but that didn't make it any less stressful. We went straight to our lawyer, who assured us that the case had no merit. We had signed legal contracts when we bought the house, and there was no clause or agreement that suggested we had to sell it back to her. In fact, we had gone above and beyond to make sure everything was legally sound, which ended up being a lifesaver in this situation. But still, the lawsuit dragged on for months. Every time we thought we could put the situation behind us, something new would come up. Court hearings were scheduled and postponed, legal documents had to be filed. It felt like we were constantly on edge, waiting for the next thing to go wrong. But in the end, the case was thrown out. The judge saw right through my mother-in-law's claims and ruled in our favor. It was a huge relief, but it was also bittersweet. We did not feel like we had won anything. We had simply defended ourselves against a baseless attack, and it left a sour taste in our mouth. Even though we had come out ahead legally, it still felt like a loss in terms of family. After the case was dismissed, we hoped that would be the end of it, but my mother-in-law still would not leave us alone. She started showing up at family gatherings where she knew we would be, trying to confront us. Luckily though, with the restraining order in place, we were able to have her removed before anything escalated. At one point, she even tried to send a letter through another family member, pleading with my wife to reconcile and give her the house back. At this point though, it was clear that she wasn't gonna change. We had done everything we could to give her the space to reflect and seek help, but she continued down this path of entitlement and manipulation. We eventually had to stop attending family events altogether to avoid the drama. Honestly, it was hard, but we knew it was the right decision for our mental health and safety. And now, almost a year later, my wife and I have fully moved on. We have strengthened our boundaries and made it clear to the rest of the family that we won't tolerate any further attempts to undermine our decisions. We still live in our beautiful home and we are expecting our first child soon. The house that caused so much drama has now become the peaceful sanctuary we always dreamed of, and we couldn't be happier. As for my mother-in-law, we have not heard from her in months. Family members occasionally try to update us on her life, but we have stopped asking by now. At this point, she is a distant memory, and while it is sad that things ended this way, we know we made the right choices for ourselves and our future family. We don't regret a thing. And the next one is titled, My Mother-in-Law Wants to Move In. So my 31 male wife's 32 female mother wants to move in with us. My wife bought a single wide for her and her mother, 3 brothers, all younger and sister, younger too, back when she was 20-ish. Nothing special, just a place for them all to live where the lot space was being rented. Well, fast forward to now and we finally bought our own place for her and I and our newborn. We've been living together alone for about 3 months now and it has been heaven. Her sister moved out of the home 2 years ago and rents an apartment. One of her brothers also moved out and lives in government housing with his partner and 2 kids. Her other brothers are 24 and 27. They stayed in that single wide my wife had bought. Well, a couple days ago, the landlord informed them that they needed to move out because he was going to build apartments on the lot. They have 2.5 months to move. My mother-in-law has been asking my wife that she wants to move in with us. The house is in my name due to a credit issue. When we purchased the home, someone in her family used her credit cards and ruined my wife's credit. And well, my wife does not want to tell her mom no, but we both agreed that we don't want her moving in for many reasons, primarily because we just moved in and have a strong relationship and feel that her mother would affect that. Plus, I like walking around in my underwear if I please, as it is our home. She is also super lazy, dirty, a slob, and I know she will never leave. I told my wife that I have no problem telling her that she's not moving in, so am I the a-hole for not allowing her a place to live? And yeah, ripe stars, let me know what you would have done in this situation and if you think that OP was the a-hole or not. And now we got an update to the story and it reads like this. So I posted about a month and a half ago how my wife and I bought our first house and my mother-in-law was showing up one day and saying that she's staying the night while I was at work, a night shift. I came home to see her sleeping on my couch. Quick recap, I had discussed with wife and she didn't feel comfortable kicking her out if she tried again, but had no problem with me kicking her to the curb. Well, she came back about 2 weeks after while I was at work and announced that she was staying the night again, only this time she brought her mother along. She didn't ask permission, didn't say anything, just showed up. Well, that morning I came home, pissed because she came over unannounced while I was away and just made herself at home on my couch again. To top it all off, they had a family birthday dinner planned that same evening that they wanted to do at my house, but my wife and I had already said no. Well then, I walked in and found 3 big pots of food that had been cooking overnight, which my wife didn't notice because they began cooking after she went to bed. One reason I knew they were planning on having their party there too was because the way my driveway is set up. Basically, its last car in has to be the first car out and she parked in my driveway with room for me to come behind instead of on the street. Meaning she planned on staying for a good while after I got home from work. I then walk in and the mother-in-law, all innocent, says, "Good morning," while again sleeping on my couch. I was pissed but didn't want to blow up, so the first thing I said was, "What do you think this is? A hotel? What's with the sleepover?" To which she says, "It's cause it's a lot more comfortable here than in our apartment." Shares it with 3 adult sons. I proceeded to make myself some dinner, turning on all the lights in our open space kitchen living room area and pouring myself a drink to make her as uncomfortable as possible. So I sat there eating and drinking my drink. Remember, this is my after work time, 6 AM, while she laid on the couch visibly looking more and more uncomfortable. After I finished, I grabbed a bunch of dirty dishes she had left, threw them in the sink and went over to have a conversation with her. I told her I never wanted her spending the night because this was not a hotel and to not be coming over to make a mess in my kitchen. She could visit her grandkids and daughter whenever she wanted, but couldn't spend the night and to respect my house. I then went into my bedroom where I heard her and her mother get up, pack their crap and get out. After that, they began a war against me, telling my wife that I kicked them out, told them to never come around and that they were not allowed to see our kids. They went on a week-long tirade to my wife, trying to convince her to leave me. She went so far as to tell my wife, who we have been dating and married for a combined 12 years, that if she didn't leave me, I would end up being abusive and maybe even hit her. What the hell? And to top it all off, I found out that they actually had their bags already waiting in their car, so they were planning on staying with us 3 months. It's been a month now and I have to say it was so worth it. My in-law has come over 2 times since then, spending no more than 3 hours combined. The best part is that she is scared of me right now that I might kick her out again. It's been paradise. Ever since she told my wife all those lies, her true colors came out and my wife's eyes were opened to how manipulative mother-in-law really is. I mean, my wife was just in the other room and she already knew that I was going to tell her mom. She heard every word. We just spent Christmas with my family but came home early to our home and enjoyed family time with just our kids, and it was the best Christmas we've had in a long time. A relevant comment was this one. So are we talking mother-in-law plus your wife's grandma? So weird as to their expectations, but good on you for drawing the line. Is this a cultural thing that they expected to live in your house? And OP said it was a weird situation. Trying to make a long story short, my wife bought a single white trailer when she was just 18 for her and her entire family to live in. All they had to do was pay rent on the lot. My wife's mom, grandma, 3 brothers, 1 sister lived there, and the lot they were renting got sold, so they were trying to smooch off my wife again by coming to live here rent-free. The next one is titled, "We staged a coup to get rid of the greedy HOA management after they neglected the neighborhood." There really is nothing like a couple of neighbors coming together for the betterment of the neighborhood. Also, there is nothing like a crappy HOA president getting kicked out and moving away because of the shame he feels. You see, my neighborhood had an HOA, and surprisingly, the HOA was not always that bad nor hard to deal with. As a matter of fact, our HOA only became a pain in the butt when a new president took over. We did not know much about the new president from the start, but just a couple months down the line, we started noticing problems. The neighborhood started looking so bad, I would almost prefer one of those HOAs that fine you for grass being tall. You see, just a couple of months after this new president took over, common areas in the neighborhood began to go unmanaged. Now, I know an unmowed lawn and overgrown flower bushes may not be the biggest thing to worry about, but I did enjoy how nice the neighborhood looked like. As a matter of fact, it was one of my favorite reasons for living there. It used to be so beautiful. Other things in the neighborhood started quickly deteriorating as well over the course of several months. The neighborhood was just starting to look unkempt and dull. It was losing its shine. Well, my neighbor and I had planned to bring this up at the next meeting. I am sure other people wanted to bring it up as well. However, right before the meeting, the board announced that all 1,100 plus HOA members would be paying annual fees that were raised 51% from the previous fee. This was just absurd. Why should we be paying all this money when the HOA was neglecting the neighborhood? Well, one of the neighborhoods did some snooping around and investigating, and they were able to find out that the HOA reserves account, you know, the one that pays for stuff around the neighborhood from the fees and whatnot that we pay, was completely depleted of funds.
From what we know, the account usually had 100,000 to 150,000 in it. So where in the hell did all this money go? Not only that, after hearing about this, a couple of other neighbors did some of their own investigations, and they were about to find out that there was another account which was supposed to have an additional 90 to 100k in it that was also depleted. The money from this account came from a cell phone tower company that the neighborhood leased some space to. Word started circulating around the neighborhood, and we all decided to come together in order to push the board president out. We also had planned to nominate my neighbor who found out about the original empty account for the position of the new board president. Well, the day of the meeting came and hundreds of HOA members were crammed into that meeting room. There were even people lined up and gathering outside. Inside the meeting room, people were constantly questioning where the money was, and my neighbor had even obtained documents that proved there should have been a lot more than what was in the accounts. Not only did the HOA president hardly speak, but several of the board members just beat around the bush and did not answer any questions directly. What was supposed to be a productive meeting led to many of us feeling irritated and frustrated. If the neighborhood was being maintained, then I assume most of us would not have an issue with the accounts being low in funds. But it was obvious there was some sort of greed happening here, and we were not okay with that. So, a bunch of the neighbors got together and decided to take actions ourselves. One of the neighbors had some connections and knew a fairly good lawyer. We figured we would stage a coup in order to recall the HOA president and the board. However, we figured without legal help this would fail for many reasons. So, with the help of a lawyer, we were able to stage an official coup to recall the HOA board members. Our lawyers had sent an appeal to the Department of Business and Professional Regulations, which oversees such disputes and issues within HOAs. This would start an official election for the HOA board members. We were still waiting on a decision when we produced a way to get the word out. We knocked on everyone's doors to let them know what was happening and how they could vote to help. While I was skeptical of doing this at first, it seemed to be working because before you know, we had enough votes and interest to have our first HOA election in years. Prior to this, elections were rare as most board members would voluntarily leave their positions before election times were up. As word got around that we were doing this, several board members actually put in their resignation letter and quit on the spot, leaving the HOA. And the HOA president followed shortly after. We were able to vote in a new HOA president and a new board member as well. So far, everything has been going really well. I am glad we went through the hassle of getting legal help involved. Oh, and the previous HOA president was ordered to pay back funds to the accounts because he had been using it for personal use. And our common areas and neighborhood are starting to look beautiful again. And yeah, Ripe Stars, this is a pattern I have noticed with many HOA Reddit stories that we have read in the past. It just takes the teamwork of a few people in the neighborhood to fight back against the HOA tyranny.
And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.